So, I've got something super cool for you today on Behind the Billions, and I'm honestly, really excited about this one. You know those stories where someone starts with absolutely nothing and ends up changing the world? Well, that's exactly what we're diving into.
Oh my God, yes. And and I know exactly who you're talking about. We're covering Oprah Winfrey, right? Like this is someone who literally went from wearing potato sack dresses as a child to becoming, one of the most influential people in the entire world.
That's that's exactly right. And what's really fascinating to me is that we're not just talking about someone who got rich. We're talking about someone who completely transformed media, right?
Absolutely. And what's really incredible is that she didn't just transform media, she kind of became this cultural force that could literally make or break books, influence elections, and really change how people think about so many different issues. Like there's actually this thing called the Oprah effect because her influence was just that powerful.
I mean, when you think about it, she was the first black woman billionaire, wasn't she?
Yes, yes, exactly. And what's really amazing is that this is someone who started out in rural Mississippi, like in absolute poverty, and just through pure talent and determination, completely rewrote what was possible.
Something I've always wondered about Oprah's early life. Just how tough was it, really?
Oh my goodness, it was incredibly challenging, like almost unimaginably so. So she was born in rural Mississippi, right, to a single teenage mother, and they were living in such extreme poverty that she literally had to wear dresses made from potato sacks. And you know what's really heartbreaking? Other kids would actually make fun of her for that.
That's that's really tough to hear. Did she live with her mom the whole time?
No, actually, and this is really interesting. She spent her early years living with her grandmother, Hattie Mae. And you know what's fascinating? Her grandmother taught her to read before she was even 3 years old. Like she would take little Oprah to church and people started calling her the preacher because she could recite Bible verses so well.
But things changed when she moved away from her grandmother, right?
Yes, yes, exactly. So when she was about 6, she moved to Milwaukee with her mother and things got, well, they got really difficult. And during her teenage years, she experienced some really serious trauma and abuse, which she's actually been really open about discussing later in her life.
But somehow she still managed to excel in school, didn't she?
Absolutely. Like this is what's so incredible about Oprah. She went through all these struggles, but she was still just brilliant in school. She became an honors student, joined the speech team, and get this, she actually landed her first job in radio while she was still in high school. And by the time she was 19, she was already co-anchoring the local evening news. Like, can you imagine doing that at 19?
So, how did she actually make that huge leap from local news to becoming, well, Oprah?
Oh my goodness, this is such an amazing part of her story. So in 1984, right, she gets this opportunity to host this morning show in Chicago called AM Chicago. And it was actually doing really badly in the ratings. Like literally at the bottom. And you know what's incredible? Within just a few months, like just a few months of Oprah taking over, the show went from last place to absolutely crushing it. She even beat Phil Donahue, who was like the king of daytime TV at that time.
That's such a quick turnaround. What made her so different?
Well, that's what's so fascinating about Oprah. She completely changed how talk shows worked. Like instead of just asking questions and moving on, she would really connect with her guests. She brought this incredible empathy and emotional openness that nobody had really seen before.
So, how did the local show become the Oprah Winfrey Show?
Right. So this is really interesting. Roger Ebert, the famous movie critic, he actually convinced her to sign this syndication deal with King World. And you know what's crazy? He predicted she would generate like 40 times more revenue than his own show. And he was totally right. The show went national in 1986 and it absolutely exploded. Like within months, she was pulling in double Donahue's national audience. And and what made it really special was that Oprah wasn't afraid to be vulnerable herself. She would share her own struggles, her own journey, and people just connected with that authenticity.
Did she face any pushback being a black woman in such a prominent position?
Oh, absolutely. Like at that time, daytime TV was dominated by white male hosts, and here comes Oprah just completely changing the game. But she was so genuine, so relatable, and so good at what she did that honestly none of that mattered. She just became this unstoppable force in television.
So once she had this huge TV success, how did she actually turn that into this massive business empire?
Oh my gosh, this is actually one of the most brilliant parts of Oprah's story. So, like in 1986, she does something absolutely genius. She creates Harpo Productions, right? And get this, Harpo is actually Oprah spelled backwards.
What made that such a smart move?
Well, you see, this was totally revolutionary at the time. Like by owning her own production company, she basically took complete control of her show and everything around it. And what's really incredible is that she was the first woman in history to own and produce her own talk show.
How did she expand beyond just the talk show?
So this is where it gets really interesting. She kept building and building. Like Harpo started producing these amazing films like The Color Purple, Beloved, and And then she moved into television production with shows like Dr. Phil and Dr. Oz. She was basically creating this entire ecosystem of media content.
And then there's the OWN network, right?
Yes, like imagine this. In 2011, she launches her own entire television network, the Oprah Winfrey Network. And you know what's really fascinating? She actually started it right after ending her talk show, so she was basically reinventing herself all over again.
What about her other business ventures?
Oh, there are so many. Like she created O Magazine, which was just incredibly successful from day one. And she has this amazing partnership with Weight Watchers. She bought 10% of the company and became their spokesperson, and the stock literally doubled after the announcement. And all of this combined to make her the first Black female billionaire in history, which is just, it's absolutely incredible when you think about where she started.
So, tell me about this thing people call the Oprah effect. What exactly was that all about?
Oh my goodness. The Oprah effect was just absolutely incredible. Like anything, and I mean anything that Oprah touched or endorsed would just instantly become massive. And I'm talking about books, products, people, ideas, everything.
Can you give some specific examples?
So right, her book club is probably the most famous example. Like when she recommended a book, it would literally fly off the shelves overnight. We're talking about books going from selling a few thousand copies to becoming instant bestsellers with millions of sales. And when she featured products on her favorite things episodes, companies would sell out within hours.
What about her influence beyond consumer products?
This is where it gets really fascinating because her influence went way, way beyond just selling products. Like she completely changed how Americans talk about personal issues and self-improvement. She made it okay for people to discuss topics that were totally taboo before, things like abuse, mental health, and sexuality.
I've heard she had a huge impact on politics too.
Oh, yes, absolutely massive. The biggest example is probably her endorsement of Barack Obama in 2008. Like this was the first time she'd ever publicly endorsed a presidential candidate, and the impact was just incredible. Studies actually showed that her endorsement brought Obama around 1 million extra votes in the Democratic primaries.
That's an amazing amount of influence for one person to have.
Right? And you know what makes it even more remarkable? She built this influence while staying true to herself. Like she wasn't just selling things or backing candidates. She was really trying to create positive change in the world. She showed that you could be both powerful and purposeful, which is really what made the Oprah effect so special.
So, let's talk about something that's really important to understanding Oprah. Her philanthropy. She's done some pretty incredible things with her wealth, right?
Oh my goodness, yes. Like, you know what's really fascinating about Oprah's charitable work is that she became one of the first Black people to rank among America's most generous donors. And she's just remained incredibly consistent with her giving over decades.
What are some of the biggest projects she's taken on?
Well, the one that's probably closest to her heart is the Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy for Girls in South Africa. Like she invested $40 million of her own money to build this absolutely incredible school. And you know what makes it really special? She really wanted to create something beautiful and inspiring for these girls who came from really disadvantaged backgrounds.
How hands-on was she with the project?
Incredibly hands-on. She actually teaches classes there through satellite. And she said that these girls are like her daughters. She's always said that education was what changed her own life. So she wanted to give that same opportunity to others.
What about her other charitable work?
Right. So there's just so much. Through her angel network, she raised more than $80 million for various causes. And get this, she personally covered all the administrative costs so that every single dollar donated would go directly to charity. And she's given away about $400 million to educational causes alone.
That's a staggering amount of money.
And you know what's really powerful about her giving? It's that she really understands poverty because she lived it. So when she gives, it's not just about writing checks. It's about creating real change. Like during one trip to South Africa, she distributed Christmas presents to 50,000 children. Just imagine that impact.
Mom, when we look back at Oprah's journey, it's kind of mind-blowing to think about how one person could have such an enormous impact on, well, pretty much everything.
Oh my goodness, yes. And what's really fascinating is that she didn't just change media, right? Like she completely transformed how we talk about everything. Personal struggles, spirituality, books, politics. You know what I mean? She created this whole new way of connecting with people through television.
And to think it all started with a little girl in Mississippi wearing potato sack dresses.
Exactly. And that's what makes her story so incredibly powerful. Like she took every single obstacle, poverty, abuse, racism, sexism, and just turned them into stepping stones. And the most amazing thing is that she brought millions of people along with her on that journey of self-discovery and growth.
So would you say that's her biggest legacy? The way she changed how we communicate?
You know what? I think her legacy is even bigger than that. She showed that authenticity and vulnerability can be incredible sources of strength. She proved that you can be both powerful and compassionate, successful and giving. And most importantly, she demonstrated that our circumstances don't define our potential. I mean, that's what Behind the Billions is all about, right? These incredible stories of transformation and impact.
Well, I think we can all agree that there will never be another Oprah.
No way. She's truly one of a kind, and her influence will be felt for generations to come.